For even those that we call lifestyle diseases, they are based in the environment. The same applies to infectious diseases that come as a result of a dirty environment, pollution. And that is why I think it's important to discuss this topic. Now, the basis of the management of biological waste comes from the fact that in Genesis 1 and Genesis 2, there is no death and there is no decay. But once sin sets in, now we have to put up with a major problem: how to deal with decaying and dead biological tissues. And we have nothing to learn from ourselves. We learn from God. Now, how does God deal with organic matter? And there are a lot of echoes. I think, should I move away? Sorry?
Your microphone is in front of the speaker.
Would you turn off these lights? Yeah, that's better for me. So we want to follow God's methods in handling biological waste. We do not want to use the interventions that science have used, and they have led to other problems. For example, after the First World War, because after men were conscripted into war, and most of the women now had to take up duties that men were doing maybe in the industries, and children were left to themselves. There was a compromise on issues of sanitation. Use of chemical weapons also led to a pollution of the air. And then we had an epidemic that was affecting the lungs. And up to today, the Spanish flu of 1918 is associated with a virus, but there lacks evidence as to the cause of the flu being a virus, because the study about what caused deaths in 1918 was done in 1951. That is, it was a reconstruction after exhumation of bodies in Alaska. And this is coming after the invention of the electron microscope. And when they are taking samples from those bodies to study what could have caused. Now, that will pose a very difficult challenge in terms of determining. So after sequencing certain proteins in those bodies, then they said this could have been the virus that could have caused the Spanish flu. But we know there was a problem with sanitation, use of chemical weapons that were inhaled, and they ended up causing lung diseases, what it's so called as the Spanish flu. It also happened after the World War II because there was use of chemicals, and a lot of fumigation was being done on areas that were seemed to be poorly sanitized. And therefore, between 1940 and 1945, there was also a problem with sanitation, and an epidemic arose. And then it was associated again with a virus that we call the polio virus. So we have a chemical epidemic, and we do not want to go that direction as far as dealing with biological waste is concerned. We want to follow what God has taught us as far as this management is concerned. And your body is a very good example of how to handle decaying or dead cells within yourself. I talked of the 4 excretion mechanisms, being the kidney, the large intestines, your skin, and your lungs, okay? In fact, we say your body has 4 dialysis machines. We have membranes in your body where waste is segregated. And there's also a lot of recycling in the body, so that only something little goes to waste. And of course, the rest that goes to waste or is not recycled is let out either through the urine, the feces, through the skin, and maybe in form of gases out of your, and you breathe them out. Okay? Now, let's move on to the next slide. Now, it's important to know that the world is also keen on matters to do with environment. They have an idea that the environment is the basis of our health. But now the problem with this is the measures they are taking in order to clean the environment have hidden agendas in them. When the Pope wrote what we call the Laudato Si in 2015, he entrenched in that document the species or the false Sabbath, such that in the process of sensitizing the world to clean up the environment or to give the environment rest or to regenerate it, then there should be a day in which no one should be working, no industries should be, producing those gases, so that we can give Mother Earth some rest. And they believe whoever does not agree with saving the environment is not reasonable. In fact, words that were used were, you are either a fundamentalist or an extremist not to agree with saving the environment. But look at what is hidden in that document, a false Sabbath. So, for us Christians, we have a way of cleaning the environment or saving it. The only unfortunate thing is that so many people are responsible for pollution of the environment, and we may not be adequate, we may not be a very good number to help regenerate the environment. That is the challenge that we have. But most of the diseases, they know they have to do with environmental pollution. Next. There's a delay in slides. Now, you could have been familiar with this classification. We've been taught that there are 5 kingdoms among the living things, and the highest kingdom where men belong to is Animalia. Okay, this is where we have man. And then as you move towards this direction, the living organisms tend to become smaller and smaller. And that also means the ability of these smaller organisms to compete or to survive in a very competitive environment reduces. The complexity of the organism reduces towards this direction, so that the animals that are on that end, or the living things on that end, they have many cells and they are complex. They have enough, they have a lot of energy to survive in a very competitive environment. But this energy reduces as you go towards this direction. And that is why you note, for bacteria, which are the Monera, they are habitat specific. This means they choose a habitat with the least resistance. And if they change the habitat, they die. And therefore, they would not want to change their habitat. And that is why you would see that we have certain infections in the tropics, which you are not going to find in the temperate areas, because there it is colder. And therefore, these microorganisms may not survive. It is not so with human beings. By the way, I do not agree with this classification because man was placed at the top of all creation, being created in the image and likeness of God. And he did not come from any other organism. In fact, I said, the organism you evolved from is superior to you, but we are higher. We came from God, and that is why we are superior to all the rest of the organisms. So my point was, we have ability to adapt. We can change environment. And something else, do you know that the amount of water these living things can hold also decreases towards this direction? Because the amount of water your body holds or an organism holds determines its ability to regulate temperatures as you change environment. Now this would mean that you have greater adaptability than a bacteria that can hold very little water in itself. Water is very important as far as helping us to adapt is concerned, because it regulates temperatures within us. So here we have a class called the fungi. And this is where I want to base my topic on, because fungi are decomposers. I may not understand how they come about, but I can say by default, with the absence of life, they set in. We know they were not there because there was no decay. That is, in Genesis 1, Genesis 2, there's no decay, and therefore there's no fungi. But they come in with the absence of life, such that even if you are to put a living tissue and close it in tightly and leave it somewhere, it could still decay even without external interference. And this is because of fungi. So I'm saying with the absence of life, they just set in. I don't know where they are, but what I know, they are not found in healthy living tissues. Education page 189, paragraph 5 says, fungus grows in decaying, diseased, or dead tissues. In healthy tissues, it doesn't. Next slide. So this is what we call the carbon cycle. It is a cycle of life. It fulfills the statement made by God in Genesis 3, I think verse 19, that out of dust you are taken, and unto dust thou shalt return. Fungi or decomposers are implied. They are not, God does not state expressly about the fungi, but we know the process of conversion of a dead body to dust has to involve decomposers. And for once, the mention of decay is assumed. So it's God's mechanism of ensuring that we don't have a lot of waste on the earth's surface. So you can see that plants will rely a lot on carbon dioxide and water to make food which will be eaten by the animals. And the major element in all organic matter is carbon. That is why we call it a carbon cycle. So your body largely consists of carbon as a major element which forms the basis of the proteins you consume, the carbohydrates you consume, the vitamins, the fats that you consume, all have carbon. So we call it a carbon cycle because life is carbon-based. By the way, we also have something we call carbon dating that is meant to date or to determine the age of organic matter depending on how much carbon, depending on the decay of carbon throughout the years. So how they do that, I do not know, but they call it carbon dating. This is simply to emphasize that you are largely, especially organic matter, it is largely carbon. So after the process of synthesis of food, and then the food is eaten, in the end, all these organisms have to go back to dust. And what enables them to go back to dust is decomposition by fungi, and then the microorganisms that are in the earth, they are going to help to break down the tissues. And God can mobilize many of them, including vultures, okay, to come and prick the body, poke the body, so that other smaller microorganisms can come. And some will lay eggs and also facilitate that decay. But as I told you, fungus will destroy the body irrespective of the rest of the organisms. So we return to dust through what we call the carbon cycle. And the microorganisms or the organisms that will do that are the fungi. Now, in the cycle of life, God is at the top. Okay? So he disseminates his energy, and he can use the sun, and the sun can help plants to photosynthesize, okay, to make food, and the animals can eat. Those are the primary consumers. They eat plants. Then we can have the secondary consumers. They eat the herbivores, and we can have the tertiary consumers, maybe the vultures and other animals that feed on other animals. And what you could have noted is that as you move away from the source of energy, there's an increasing tendency to become unclean. The animals just tend to become unclean as they move away from the source of energy. Okay? This would mean that the closer you are to the source of energy, the cleaner you are. And therefore, I would pray that all of us, we would use the plants because they are closer to the sun, which is closer to God, who is the overall source of energy. Okay, let's move on. I would not wish us to be anywhere closer to the fungi, isn't it? Exactly. Now, there's a case where Ellen White had a fungal infection. This is to help us know that we had fungal infections even during the time of the pioneers, and it's important also to be sensitive of fungal infections. They are so dangerous, and we'll come to point out this. Now, in this case, we are told, somebody to read for me, it's taken from letter 28, 1872.
Say,
yes.
while in Rhode Island, a letter was received from you, but it was impossible to answer it. My eyes were so bad with inflammation, I could not write or read. I took a violent cold from sleeping in damp, moldy beds, which settled all over me, but affected my eyes badly. I thought it impossible for me to go before the public at all, but my husband persuaded me to go, and after speaking a few minutes, the pain and heat left my eye.
Mm-hmm.
Talked twice to a large congregation in Westerly. My eyes have not yet recovered fully,
But they are much better. Now, this may remind us about, will help us to know that fungus can affect any part of the body. The other thing is, it is secretive. Can I say insidious, or it's not easy to notice? You have to be very keen. And that is why this sensitization is very important. Look at the last statement that says, my eyes have not yet recovered. There are some tissues that are so delicate, tiny, such that once there is inflammation, they can adhere to one another easily. So the best we can do to save such structures as the eyes is to be sensitive of how you can pick the fungotoxins. They are called mycotoxins. And one of them is avoiding these damp, moldy beds, okay, that have not been aerated or taken out in the sun, because mold or fungus loves dark, moist, and warm places. For example, the athlete's foot. It's easier to get athlete's foot in the feet, than to get it between your fingers. What could be the difference? If you're more predisposed to get them in the feet and not in the hands, what could be the reason for that? The hands are exposed, isn't it? Okay? And there's aeration. But once you close your legs with socks and then it's warm inside and then you are sweating. Now, fungus loves those neglected places in the body. And that is why we need to ensure that our feet are also aerated and they are exposed to the sun, because by so doing, and they are also clean to control the fungus. Then something else I need to mention is fungal infections are also diseases of long continuance. They are very stubborn to treat. In fact, some of the treatment for fungal infections can take the rest of your lifetime. That is according to medical the conventional treatment. So they are diseases of long continuance. They are stubborn to treat. And we'll mention some of them here so that you get the point I want to deliver. Next. Now, let's consider, or let's look at this case of Willie, who was the son of Ellen White. Now, the case of Willie is happening after the death of their son. I think Henry. Yeah, Henry is the one who died of pneumonia. So later, Willie goes down with a condition called pneumonia. And I want somebody to read. Let's see whether facts make sense here. Okay? I dreamed.
Says, I dreamt that an experienced physician was standing by my child, watching every breath with one hand over his heart and with the other feeling his pulse. He turned to us and said, the crisis has passed.
Meaning he has healed.
Last night.
Yes.
He will now come up speedily, for he has not the injurious influence of drugs to recover from. Nature has nobly done her work to rid the system of impurities.
Now, I'm interested in the last sentence that says nature has nobly done her work to rid the system of impurities. Willie went down with pneumonia. They had made a mistake in the treatment of the first child because they recruited the services of a physician. But in this second case, they used hydrotherapy to support the system. It is interesting to note, though it's a case of pneumonia, which today is said to be caused by bacteria, that she remarks, nature had done her work to rid the system of impurities. I never thought pneumonia has to do with getting rid of impurities out of the body or out of the lungs. Now, would you connect that one with a bacteria that you need to kill in order to heal pneumonia, vis-a-vis getting impurities out of the system? It's remarkable. But the point you need to know is there's a controversy as to the cause of pneumonia. It's a lung infection. It's a lung infection, and it has to do with impurities in the lungs. We will come to discover that fungal toxins are the main culprits in lung infections, as opposed to bacteria. But something else you need to know about bacteria. We said that God had created even microorganisms during the creation week, especially on the 6th day. Those are the animalcules that creep, okay? Some are observable by your naked eyes, but others you need a supportive lens to be able to see them. And part of those organisms include the microorganisms. Now, you have so many of them on your skin, in the digestive system, okay, in the eyes, in the mouth. You have bacteria because they are part of the normal flora, okay, and they are useful. And the extent to which they are useful includes also supporting your immune system. One of the things I have noted about bacteria is that they are not as dangerous as they are purported to be. And I can give you an example. For example, a baby is born, does not have immunity. And the very first thing when they are coming out of the mother's womb, they're interacting with these bacteria. If these things were so bad as they are claimed to be, then they will take advantage of the baby when it doesn't have immunity. But this does not happen. The same applies to the street boys. You know street boys, eh? They interact with a lot of dirt. And you wonder, why don't these people die because of bacterial infections? They don't. There's a way the body lives harmoniously with bacteria, but not so with fungus. Fungus is dangerous. Fungal infections are dangerous because it is something I cannot describe properly, but it does not have those characteristics of, I don't know whether to put it as a living thing or a non-living thing. Because number one, it doesn't move, okay? One major characteristic of living things, according to Genesis 1, verse 27, they creep. It could be slow movement, it could be fast movement, they move. But fungus doesn't. Fungus grows into. And anytime you see erosion of the skin, it doesn't matter whether on a mucous membrane, on the skin, erosion of the skin, then there could be a fungal infection because it is fungus that digs, burrows into your skin. So this is a case of use of hydrotherapy to clear the lungs of impurities in a disease that was purported to be caused by bacteria. By the way, why do we put food in the refrigerator? Mbona tunaweka chakula kwa fridge?
So that it doesn't get infected and decay.
So that it doesn't?
Yeah, like, so that it doesn't have developed bacteria.
Sorry? So that you? Bacteria. Okay? Does code have effect on the fungus? Maybe let me ask this question in a: do bodies decompose if left in the snow? Do they decompose? But they eventually do what? They will eventually decompose. You might slow the decomposition, but eventually there will be decomposition. But bacteria are weak. You can suppress them with code, not so with fungus. Okay? So when you put food in the fridge and the food is dead, though at a microscopic level you may not notice, but be sure fungal growth is taking place. And some of the problem we have had, especially in Kenya here, is the issues to do with preservation of especially animal products. If you kill a cow, long time ago, you used to see our butcheries had what? Flies, isn't it? Do you see flies these days? No. Why? Why? After an animal dies, how long does it take for decomposition to start? How long does it take? If you look at what was being done in the sanctuary, because the sanctuary is a very good example of how God ensured a clean environment was maintained. They were dealing with biological tissues. Once the animal dies or it is killed, they have to be very fast. The process of the sacrifice to the time it's taken to the altar, it should be a continuous, without any delay, so that we do not have decomposition. Now, scientifically, we say decomposition is setting after 8 hours. So at that time, you can observe microscopic changes in the tissue. But I tend to use nature to know when decomposition starts, because I was killing animals a long time ago. And I used to see this. Anytime we are skinning the animal, the house flies are 2 or 1. After 5 minutes, they increase to 5. And then they continue increasing like that. And you know, they have a very fine sense of smell. If you see them come, decomposition has set in. Now, what is being done in Kenya is injection of sodium nitrates into meat. That is what is kicking away the flies. But this is a toxic chemical. Now, how safe are we? Because if you say, then let's go for fish. By the time fish leaves Lake Victoria to the time it lands here in Nakuru, do you see that time space? Decay has taken place. And how many vehicles that bring fish to Nakuru are refrigerated? Huh? So we are eating fungus through meat products. No wonder Ellen G. White talks of dead flesh as a source of tuberculosis, scrofula, and cancer because of these mycotoxins. It's a very common cancer that is caused by fungus, liver cancer. Have you ever heard of it? Yes, hepatocellular carcinoma. Okay? It's caused by fungus. And there are many cancers that are caused by fungus. Those fungal toxins, they are that bad. Okay? It has to do with how we deal with this dead matter. But the safest way we can avoid fungal toxins is to do away with dead flesh. Is there a way you can eat live flesh? Unaweza epuka useme mimi yangu nakula ikiwa hai. Okay? I don't think you can avoid. Let's go to the next slide. Now, fungal infections can also result to death. Now look at this. We are told that some of the rooms offered to guests were not well ventilated. Clothing or bedding was not regularly changed. So there was mold and fungal growths in the walls, in the clothes. And this could have or resulted into the death of the visitors who entered those rooms. Now, in this case, we are told, did I get somebody to read for me?
So they occupied the room
Uh-huh.
there and contracted colds from the effects of which one has since died.
Aha, you can even stop there. Now, we have always believed that any cold is caused by a virus. Did you ever know that fungus can also cause colds and flu? It irritates the upper airway. It causes allergy. And the allergies can also complicate to asthma and other lung infections. And we are going to learn a lot from some information that was written by Dr. Harvey Kellogg, a very talented doctor. That some of the things we assume could be bacterial or viral infections are not actually viral infections or bacteria. There's a result of fungus. And this is because of the dirty environment, including diseases we contract from the bedroom. Do you know how much time you spend in the bedroom daily? You spend a third of your life in your bedroom. That is if you spend 8 hours of sleep daily. Now this means that if you do not change bedding, and as you sleep through the night, you are sweating, we have dead skin scraping off and falling into your bedding. And tomorrow you have to sleep in the same place and you're breathing into the same air, and we do not have good ventilation. Now, what do you think is the cumulative effect of somebody who has a lifespan of 70 years after they have lived for 25 years? You see that cumulative effect? Eventually, it will cause a serious disease. And some of the diseases some of them are thought to be autoimmune diseases, like arthritis. Yet they are fungal, they are of fungal origin. We believe, or it is said, that every elderly man or woman has to get osteoarthritis. But I don't think that is true. So they can also lead to death. Please be careful of your bedroom, because this is where you are spending a third of your life in. Next. Are they over? Okay. Now, fungal toxins are called mycotoxins. Please read for me.
The confined air of unventilated rooms meet us with sickness, odors of the mildew and mold and impurities exhale from its inmates. The emanation from the damped, moldy rooms and clothing are poisonous to the system.
They are poisonous to the system. You can stop them. Mold is poisonous. It will damage your system. And by the way, it can easily be spread in the blood. It can lodge in the brain or any other place where blood goes. It produces poisonous, it's poisonous to the system. But now, it will be good to know that one of the ways we control, or some of the ways we control mold, are not expensive. For example, aerating your clothes or yourself that is aerating and also basking in the sun. Because sun helps also to kill the fungal spores at their early stages. So cleanliness, like use of water, that is external cleaning, the internal cleaning, okay? There's some place in the body where fungus is likely to grow. You know, fungus loves stagnation. Did you get that? Fungus loves stagnation. I'll give you an example. Before the food you eat is beneficial to you, it has to die. So we take live food from the plants, but for it to be assimilated into your body, it has to die. It has to be crushed by chewing. So by the time your food lands in the stomach, it is dead. And it's going to stay in the stomach for 4 hours. It is likely to have fungus. Definitely it will have fungus. Were it not for the hydrochloric acid God put in the stomach. Would you thank God for that? Were it not for the HCl that God has? And you need to have high concentrations of hydrochloric acid. Between 1 to 3. Most people complain here that I have acid. It is not wrong to have acid. It should be there. Okay? In fact, it is wrong not to have acid. Most of the issues I hear, I interact with patients coming to say that they have a lot of acid, and so therefore they have to use antacids. They are not actually hyperacidity patients. They are hypoacidity. The problem with hypoacidity is if you do not have the right amount of acid in the stomach, there is a valve above your stomach and a valve below your stomach, and those valves close and open depending on how concentrated your acid is. If you are less concentrated in that acid, they keep opening. And that is why when the stomach contents come out, of course, the esophagus, the food pipe, is not adapted to high acid, even low acid. So even the content that does not have a lot of acid, it is going to burn your throat and you have heartburns. For bile, which is responsible for digesting fats and oils, to be released, the body has to sense that the food in the stomach has been fully dissolved in acid evenly, before the valve below the stomach is allowed to open. And if you don't have a lot of acid, then the food keeps long in the stomach. Now, with low acid, extended periods in the stomach, fungal infections. You do your own research, do your homework. Most of the gastritis, chronic gastritis that cannot be treated, is actually fungal. It's of fungal origin. And it has to do with the period that dead food has stayed in the stomach. Now, if you go to the large intestine, that is the other place where there's a delay of food coming out. And because of that delay, and you do not have enough bacteria, because bacteria also control fungus, but you don't have enough of them. then fungal infection sets in, because by default, in the absence of life, just it sets in. So in the large intestine, you have problems, including tumors. And I want to challenge you. Why do you think we have very few problems in the small intestine, but we have problems in the stomach and problems in the large intestine, vis-a-vis very few problems, if any, in the small intestine? Here, food is moving so fast. The contact time is little. But only the places where food extends its contact with the intestine, we have problems. Now think about that. Next. Did I finish my point? I think. Now, this information is got from Kellogg's Handbook on Hygiene and Rational Medicine. And this is what he used to call medicine. Rational medicine. Okay? It has to be based on facts of nature. Now, read it for me. Many people
who do not appreciate the importance of the sunshine, as they should allow mold and mildew to accumulate upon their walls in the damp weather,
Yes.
especially in the nooks and corners, that will be unobserved,
Yes.
never thinking that any harm will come from so doing.
Yes.
Such are ignorant of the fact that each punch of the mold is a forest of the millions of little plants which are constantly throwing off into the air myriads of germs to be inhaled by the occupants of the house.
In Europe, conditions that had to do with inhaled, that is airborne diseases, they were called bad air, malaria, okay? So they were saying it's bad air that is causing diseases. But I want you to know something else. Fungal spores are airborne, can easily be transmitted through the air, easily, highly contagious. The fungus itself is not contagious, but the spores, they are light, and in warm climate, they can easily be spread. And you can pick so many of these. They irritate the upper airway. And when they irritate the upper airway, some of you call it allergy, wengine wataita homa, okay? Sawa sawa. Wengine watasema ni bacterial, so you go and get antibiotics. Sawa sawa. For upper airway infections, which is wrong. When you get antibiotics, what are you doing? You're killing yourself, okay? It's an anti-life medication. You are killing your own cells. Now, please note that for fungus, we don't give antibiotics. Why? They don't work, okay? And what is given, I don't know whether it works, okay? I don't know whether it works. So, if we don't give antibiotics, anti-life for fungus, what is it? What is it? Is it life? What do you think? So in order to kill a microorganism, we give an antibiotic. But we don't give antibiotics for fungus. So is it life? What is it? This thing is stubborn, I tell you. You see, in a body, and I'll give you an example. If somebody has cancer and they have been through chemotherapy and radiotherapy, in fact, other tissues have the effects of that radiotherapy. Imagine fungus sets in that tissue. I wonder what this thing is. It can eat tissue that has radiations easily. And that is why I told you, I don't know where to classify, but it's bad. And I want you to do your homework, because look at all the diseases that have been said to be caused by viruses. And I have looked at every one of them. And I'm seeing fungal characteristics in them. A very good example, just Google, you have a phone, you can do it later. Look at HIV stage 2, 3, and 4, because stage 1 is said it doesn't have symptoms. But look at stage 2, 3, and 4. All those symptoms and diseases listed there, tell me which one of them is not a fungal infection, apart from malnutrition, which causes loss of weight. The other place we have the controversy is the virus. No, science admits that it's a non-living particle. And of course, it doesn't have the characteristics of life, such as feeding. It doesn't feed, it doesn't respire, it doesn't reproduce. It depends on your cell machinery to do that. It doesn't. What are the characteristics of life? It doesn't grow, okay? So it's a non-living particle. So what do you mean by a non-living particle? Which is the other name for non-living? Dead. What is non-living? Dead. Now, if you take a drug to kill somebody, which is something which is already, would you take a drug to... Now, we take antibiotics to kill microorganisms so that we clear them and we can recover from the disease. But if the microorganism is already dead, now, what do you want to do to it? To make it more dead? It's interesting, yeah? So, these organisms, in quotes, that are coming after day 6 of creation, I'm very careful about them. I'm very careful. For the fungus, at least I can know it has to do with coming to decompose. And therefore, I have to be careful about dead tissue in my compound, in my body, okay? I have to be careful. A virus is of human creation. It evolved. And of course, I don't believe in evolution. So I have to be careful about things of human origin. But they are non-living. Humans cannot create life. Now, next. Now tell me, is leprosy a fungal or a bacterial disease? Read it for me.
There is good evidence for believing that the forms of leprosy described in the Jewish law as affecting the house were nothing more than certain form of mold and fungoid growths, which are especially liable to be present in warm countries like the land of Palestine.
Yes.
The description of the so-called leprosy in the house, together with proper means to be adopted to remove the difficulty, may be found in Leviticus chapter 14.
So if you read Leviticus 13 and 14, you are going to find how serious leprosy, mold, was, to the extent a house could completely be demolished just to get rid out of mold out of the camp of Israel. So imagine the house you have constructed being taken down in its entirety because of the presence of mold. Now, you are not talking about any mean thing. That's a serious thing, isn't it? Sure? Yes. And did you know that the most dreaded disease, in Palestine and in the world was leprosy. Did you know that? Because the manner of contracting the disease, it started in very secretive, insidious ways. It can disseminate secretively. And once the entire system contracts the disease, the description of the person who has leprosy is perfectly described in Isaiah 1, verse 5 and 6. What does it say? The whole body, from the foot to the head, is full of disease.
Full of wounds.
Exactly. And there was such a man who came to Jesus. I think it's in Luke chapter 5. A man full of leprosy. So this would mean only by observation there was no part of the body that was not affected by leprosy. And I've seen diseases that behave the same, like tuberculosis. No wonder it's called consumption. Any tissue in the body is destroyed by tuberculosis. Now, someone says that tuberculosis is caused by bacteria. They call it mycobacterium tuberculosis. Now, myco is fungus. The features of tuberculosis are all characteristic of a fungal infection. The same applies to leprosy. Interestingly, we are going to find why is leprosy not talked about by science. Is there an intention to hide something? Next. So the question is, why leprosy is not mentioned today? Now, read for me that paragraph.
The mold itself is not communicable to human beings. But as it grows, it throws off into the air myriads of germs, which give rise to fermentation and putrefaction.
Yes.
And when taken into the human system, the serious diseases.
Leads to serious disease.
How many leprosy houses may be found now?
I have a question to you. Do you have a leprous house? You are going to deny. Did we talk about the badly ventilated houses? Houses where bedding is not taken out on a daily basis to air out. Houses that are not regularly cleaned. Houses where clothes are piled up through the week. Houses where we have dead matter around the compound. Houses where there is the smell of rottenness from the garbage. Houses where animal excreta is smelling. Nani ashaikuwa kwa nyumba ambako nguruwe wanafugwa? Ushaisikia hiyo harufu huwa inatoka? Now, what does the smell from a pigsty tell you? Because it's so bad. What does it tell you? Now, does it tell you that you can get life from the pigsty? No. Because these senses are supposed to communicate danger or safety. Now, if you smell a bad smell, it should not attract you to where that bad smell is coming from. But you see, people can comfortably live with those smells. They've become so insensitive. Now, the damage that is doing to your system, including inhalation of fungal spores, will have significant damages to your lungs. And most of the diseases that are treated as colds, pneumonia, asthma, okay, that affect the lungs, most of them have to do with the fungal spores that irritate your lungs. Next. Now, so the question was, why is leprosy not mentioned? And I thought the devil does not want it to be mentioned. Why? It is the only disease that exposes the character of sin. Now, read for me this.
He saw that the earth was leprous with sin.
Yes.
And he caused the plague of the heart to be refilled in the dreadful judgment of the physical leprosy.
Of physical leprosy. Uh-huh.
As leprosy was sure dead if permitted to take its natural course. So the leprosy of sin will destroy the soul unless the sinner receives the healing of the grace of God.
Leprosy, physical leprosy, represents sin. And I tried to compare and to contrast the disease leprosy and sin. They are similar, even the way it starts and its ultimate effect on the person, because it will eventually lead to death. And then it will affect every system in the body. It permeates the entire system. And that is how sin does. Eventually, it will kill you. In the same way, leprosy can kill. And I encounter so many cases of leprous patients in my practice. So many of them. Some of them are ulcers that are non-healing, okay? Some of them are inflammations to the lungs, to the gastritis we've been talking about, arthritis, diseases of the eyes, okay? And you would like to know that among 10 patients who present to the doctor's office, 8 of them, the diagnosis will not be known. So they will be treated for a condition that cannot be definitely described. Because people will come with exhaustion, they will come with headaches, they will come with joint pains. Then you try to figure out, and doctors have been taught, if you get those indefinite symptoms, then think of a virus. Okay? It's easier to think that way because science does not like being embarrassed. You have to get a diagnosis so that you can start treating. So most of these conditions that cannot be defined are symptoms of fungal infections. Now, if you read Matthew 4:23, and I want us to read that one, if you can project, the better. I'll tell you something about that verse, especially when it comes to health. Matthew 4, verse 23. What does it say?
It says,
And Jesus went about.
And Jesus went about all Galilee, teaching in their synagogues, and preaching the gospel of the kingdom, and healing all manner of sickness and all manner of diseases among the people.
So he was healing all manner of sickness and all manner of disease. So my question is, what's the difference between disease and sickness? I may not know the definition clearly, but I know one of them is specific. Which one could that be? And the other one is vague. Kwa Kiswahili inasema alikuwa akiponya kila aina ya magonjwa na udhaifu. So one is specific. But the specificity is also vague, because if you come to me, you have diabetes, You know, I'm looking at rising of blood sugar as the problem. So I think if I lower your blood sugar, I will have cured the problem. But then, why do we have complications of diabetes in people who are on medication, faithfully on medication? Because they will still develop neuropathy, that is numbness, they will have kidney failure, they will have. Yet, we have faithfully controlled the sugars. So that tells you what? We are not even specific in what we think is specific. But when it comes to sicknesses where you cannot diagnose specifically what is this, now there's a problem for science there because there's no treatment. You see, treatment is based on evidence. And if you have not arrived at the diagnosis, then what are you treating? That is when now science have to treat symptoms. And most of the diseases people are treated for, they are being treated of symptoms. We have what we call symptomatic management. So that when you have suppressed the symptoms, you are happy, it's for a short time, and then you have to come back after the disease is full blown. So we want a kind of management that is based on what caused the disease, not what comes as a result of that disease. Okay, let's go back to the slides. And I want to conclude now. Okay. Just move on. So in this case, this one we have discussed, your house could, because of mold, it could be demolished completely. Next. Okay. Now look at this. Now this is where I'm ending. Now I want you what Kellogg is saying about some of the conditions that we treat today, and in this case, pneumonia. When such cases have run their course, doctors may say that died of hepatitis lungs. Nice. Doctors will say, you see, people are dying of molds, but doctors will say he died of hepatized lung. Hepatized lung. What is a hepatized lung? The only disease we know that we defined by hepatization is pneumonia. So simply, Dr. Kellogg is saying somebody died of a mold or a fungal infection, but doctors will say he died of pneumonia. And we have many examples in SOP of people who died or contracted their disease in winter. That is, assuming pneumonia is caused by bacteria, I assume bacteria should be suppressed in winter. But we have cases of people during the time of Ellen White who contracted pneumonia in winter. And of course, I do not expect cases of pneumonia from bacteria to be in the temperate areas. We have a belt of pneumonia south of Sahara. And of course, as usual, as I told you, it affects people of low socio-economic status, poverty. Because of poverty, diseases of malnutrition, their immunity is compromised. Crowding, okay? Maybe because of crowding, we have spread of fungal spores. And the other thing is, of course, the young ages, the elderly, they are most affected. And you know, pneumonia in Africa, it's among the diseases that are mostly vaccinated, but yet they are among the leading causes of death, south of Sahara, okay? So, it's like conventional medicine has missed what causes pneumonia. And maybe we have a cue here that what doctors may call pneumonia is actually fungal spores, infections from fungal spores, and the way we are dealing with sanitation in our environment. And therefore, let's be careful about sanitation. It's very, very important. Now, let me stop there. Before I conclude, I have to finish with a question that was asked. Or is there a question? Among you? Yes, please.
How would you treat fungal infection?
Sorry?
How would you then treat the fungal infection?
Okay. Nice. I've read in Desire of Ages about the case of the man who had, who was full of leprosy. I don't remember the page. But at some point, to paraphrase, it stated that it was incurable and it could only be cured by divine intervention. Now that teaches me something, because this is, leprosy was incurable and sin is also incurable. So I have come to discover, because I have employed the same methods when dealing with my patients, and I have been dealing with fungal infections, I've come to discover that anything that represents Jesus, just as you hear, Jesus is the Son of righteousness, Jesus is the water of life, Jesus is the bread of life, Jesus is the rock, salt, okay? So I've treated fungus with rock salt, water, okay? Aeration, Jesus is the breath of life, aeration, Son of righteousness, okay? And good nutrition. There's a patient about 2 weeks ago or 3 weeks ago who came with one of the toes of the feet black and about to drop off. It was midway, dug into by fungus, okay? And I used carrot poultices and activated charcoal, and within 7 days, she regained her toe. That was amazing, and I thank God for it. Yeah. And you can do so with many other fungal infections. Okay? Including bitter herbs, they work well. Just know they are stubborn. Sometimes if they infect certain delicate tissues, they might leave permanent damage, like in the eyes. Okay? But we can prevent them, and we can use the methods that I have described to counter them. Okay, now allow me to answer one of the questions that was asked. Or is there something else? Okay. Somebody had asked a question yesterday on if we can go to natural methods of family planning because of the adverse effects associated with hormonal contraception. And I think they were asking the question to understand whether natural methods can work. So I'll pose the question to you. Do you think natural methods can work, or we have to use hormonal contraception? What do you think? Can natural methods work? Natural, we mean what? Counting the days, because that is the best form of natural family planning that we have. So, nimewauliza swali. You can, I want to come off the camera, you can. Please, turn it off.